Well, it was. It's an honour to have you on. Thank you so much for being here, Ruby Dhal. Well, let's start with talking about your book.
Yeah.
The Path to Self-Love. What does self-love mean to you?
Self-love is, to me, it's a life-changing tool, especially when you're healing, when you're on a healing journey. If you use self-love, it can help you have better relationships, set healthier boundaries with the people in your life. You can use self-love to feel better about yourself, to heal from your past trauma. So self-love is literally, it's the best tool that you could possibly use when you're healing from something traumatic or hurtful or painful, essentially. And self-love changed my life for the better when I was healing.
And we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, but I was saying, before we started this podcast actually, and before we sort of delved into the sort of like growth stuff, the growth mindset stuff, I always thought of self-care and self-love as like having a bubble bath and putting some music on, lighting some candles and painting my nails and being like, I'm loving myself. But then actually there's still the feelings of like low self-worth and stuff like that bubbling below the surface. Could you talk a little bit about the difference between self-love and self-care practices maybe?
Absolutely. So when I was writing this book, that's the biggest thing I wanted to tackle, how self-love is perceived in today's day and age, especially on social media with, Gen Z, the new generation that we've got. Self-love is so easily absorbable. Like we watch people indulge in it on social media every single day. People are going for runs in the morning, 5 a.m. runs. They're going for a matcha tea latte. They're meeting up with a friend. They're having a bubble bath. They're doing all these things that we see as self-love, that we think, okay, if I do this, if I do what this particular influencer on TikTok or Instagram is doing, I will feel better about myself. I will love myself more. I will feel happier, more content. I will, I'll be better in my life in general. And then we go ahead and we do those things. We join the gym. We start eating healthier. We drink our 2 liters. We, go for a coffee date with our friend or by ourselves. We take our dog for a walk to the park. We do everything. And then the internal stuff has not been dealt with. You're still feeling bad. You're still feeling, pain from a particular experience that you had many years ago. And the reason for this is because the self-care practices that we watch people indulge in, that's just what I term as easy self-love. It's not easy to do. It's not called easy because, you can easily go to the gym. No, going to the gym is very hard. Doing a hardcore workout, you don't really feel, happy in the moment, but the endorphins and all the different hormones that are released later, you feel a lot better afterwards. The reason why it's easy is because it's easy to recognize as self-love. So when you witness people engaging in these forms of self-care practices, this particular person is practicing self-love. But there is another side to self-love, and that particular side to self-love is called tough self-love. Okay, so that is the really hard to do stuff. It is having difficult conversations. It is getting closure. It is giving closure. It is admitting that I perhaps have a drinking problem. It is taking myself to an AA class. It is getting therapy. It is journaling. It is doing all those things that we don't really term and, categorize as self-love. It's because the feelings that you get when you do these particular activities, so when you go to a therapist or when you have these difficult conversations, you're not feeling as happy as you would if you were having a bubble bath, right? The emotions are completely different. But the long-term effects of those things, of the tough form of self-love, is a lot more life-changing. That is the form of self-love that is going to change your life for the better and improve it for the best. And it's not that the self-care stuff isn't important. It's very important, but you need to do the other things as well in order for you to actually truly benefit from the self-care stuff.
It's almost like waxing the car but not looking under the bonnet to figure out what's in it.
That's it. It's like renovating your house from the outside but not from the inside. You're not going to be able to truly benefit from the outside stuff until you work on the inside stuff. And I learned the hard way, when I was trying to heal from, I went through quite a few painful experiences in my life. And when I was trying to heal from them, I was doing all the outside stuff. I joined the gym to deal with my self-esteem issues, my body image issues. I would drink my 2 liters. I would read all the time because I loved reading. I did all the stuff that I thought was going to truly bring happiness, but I felt empty. on the inside. I wasn't, content with myself. I wasn't happy with myself. And it wasn't until I sat down and dealt with my past trauma, I sat down and looked into my, adolescent or my childhood years and saw why I felt the way that I do, why I get into these kind of relationships and friendships, why is there a pattern of this particular toxic type of person coming into my life. I had to deal with it. And until I didn't deal with it, until I didn't do the internal stuff, I truly couldn't enjoy the external stuff. And now I enjoy the external stuff so much more.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's so much to unpack there and so much to think about. And I'm sure there's so many people listening that are like, this is what I need, because, I'm the same, it's called working on yourself because it's work, right? It's nicer to have done than to do, if that makes sense. So maybe we could start by talking about your journey and how you started off, if you're going through this tough time and you were doing all like the easy self-love stuff. Yeah. How did you move into more of the tough love stuff? What was that realization for you and how did you start?
The realization occurred to me when I think I was a year or 2 years into my self-care practices, all the easy self-care practices, and I still wasn't feeling happy. I still wasn't feeling good. And I had just started dating my now husband. Okay. So love, relationships was a huge form of trauma in my life. I went through quite a few difficult experiences when I was younger. So I lost my mum when I was 4. And then as a result of that, there was my dad, there was my brother, but my dad had his own particular personal issues to deal with. He was dealing with his PTSD through self-medicating through alcohol. So I had a very traumatic childhood, and I had a very difficult childhood as a child of an immigrant parent as well. So, I went through all of that. I moved to the UK when I was 3, lost my mum at 4, and then went through all the various experiences that an immigrant child goes through, but then add to that my dad's particular experiences, his painful experiences, and then the particular perception that I formed of love was love is good for you if it causes you pain, essentially. If it's a struggle, it's love. If it's painful, it's love. If it's unhealthy, it's love, because I had witnessed my dad be in pain his entire life after losing the woman that he loved. So whenever I would talk to anyone new, whenever I would have a situationship or a dating experience or whatever, I was always attracted to the people who made me struggle. I was always attracted to the kind of guys, who steered me on and then kind of left me hanging, essentially. If it was a struggle, it's true. And then I started dating this wonderful man who's my now husband. He was kind, he was genuine, he was honest, ruthlessly honest. He didn't pretend to be something that he wasn't. And a few months into our relationship, and I realized that there were some very deep issues that I was dealing with, I would pick fights. I would try to argue. I would try to, when there was nothing wrong, I would try to create a problem, essentially, because there was so much baggage and so much trauma in my life that I had to deal with. And this guy wasn't going anywhere. He was like, okay, this is happening. Everything's okay, but we're having issues. Why don't we deal with it? Why don't we talk about it? What is it? What is it that's bothering you? And then I looked at him and I was like, there's this perfectly normal, as healthy as a person can be, wanting to work on this relationship with me, wanting to be there in the long run, but I am not dealing with what's in here so that I can get into this healthy relationship and so that I can make the most of it. And that's how you break out of the cycle, isn't it? You break out of the cycle by trying to free yourself from your past trauma, trying to move on from all those, shackles of those difficult experiences and those memories and that pain. And only then can you get into a healthy relationship, cultivate healthy relationships, and then create that healthy environment for your future kids. That's how you break out of that intergenerational trauma. And when I sat down with myself, I realized, okay, so I've been trying to work on myself as much as I can. I eat healthy, I go to the gym, I make time for myself, I read, I try to make time for my family and friends. Why am I not able to heal? And then when I started, doing the trauma work, when I started reflecting on my relationship with my dad, with my past, my memories, when I started truly untangling love from toxicity and so on, that's when I was truly able to not only make a positive change in my relationship, but make a positive change in myself and in my life. And people can say this is healing work, but to me, it's self-love work, because the intention, so self-love, I define it as an intention to take care of your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And it's not always easy to do. And so I was working with the intention to take care of myself and improve my life by carrying out these very, very difficult, hard to do actions. And as my life got better, I was happier and I loved myself more. And so that's how I realized that, oh my God, it was all this, inner work that I was supposed to do that I didn't do. And now that I'm doing it, I'm a lot happier. So it took just one person sitting me down and being like, what's going on? Like, someone looking from the outside, what's going on with you? Everything's okay. It looks okay, but to me, it wasn't. Nothing was okay.
Yeah, and I think it's important as well to distinguish that you weren't doing the work for your partner. You were doing it for yourself. And there's a big difference because I think sometimes, we might get into a relationship or a friendship or a work situation or whatever it is and try to improve yourself for the external validation or, whatever it is. And I think there's a big difference between that and actually getting into a situation in a relationship or a friendship or work or whatever it might be and realizing there's an issue and looking within and noticing that everything happening around you is sort of reflecting back to you the issues that you need to work on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge difference.
It wasn't so much as he was my partner and he told me, it was more so he's an external person. So everyone in my life, my dad, my brother, my cousins, they're all internal in that they have grown up with me. There was never up until that point someone external who had come and who had made it apparent that there was something going on. This was someone who came from a different background, different lifestyle, different upbringing, and he came and he kind of made it apparent that, okay, he came from a different background. He didn't have the same trauma that I did and so on. Everyone goes through their fair share of struggles, but he came from a place where I was like, okay, this looks like someone who has come from a healthy-ish upbringing and he sees life in a different way. And so to see life from his perspective and to see that not everyone is the end of the world, not everything is the end of the world is how I see it. And life can get better. It was those particular things that really, stood out to me. But it was also that he was in my support group. He was in my safe space. Safe space doesn't have to consist particularly of a love, angle or anything of that sort. It can be your cousins, your friends, whatever it is, your family. When you have a safe support circle and someone in that safe support circle makes space for you and says, I am here to either hear you out or listen to what it is that you're experiencing or just reflect back, how you're acting to show you that, look, this is what's going on. It really opens up your eyes because those are the people that you trust. And so it could be anyone. But until then, it was like no one had truly made me in my safe space feel in that particular way that there was something wrong. I had my brother, I had my dad, but we all had our we had our individual issues. We all were going through something. So when that came to the forefront, it kind of brought to my attention all the previous patterns in my life of, there was also this sense of, I wasn't okay with a healthy relationship. Like I needed something. And it kind of made me realize all the previous, talking stages or friendships that I got into. It was also always with the same kind of personalities that up until him were very different to how he was. And so when I when I opened my arms to the possibility of something healthy, I manifested healthier friendships, healthier people. It just changed my life for the better. It wasn't just the relationship, it was everything. My relationship with my dad is a lot better, my brother. It just kind of opened me to the world of possibilities of what I can do when I just break out of that particular cycle, basically.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if now would be a good time as well to discuss the fact that I guess there's some people might think that self-care and self-love is perceived as sort of like selfish.
Yeah.
And maybe we could talk a little bit about that and all the reasons why it's not selfish.
Oh, yeah. So one very, very important facet of my book, there's a whole chapter on relationships. Okay, a whole chapter on familial relationships, friendships, love. And in the initial definition that I write of self-love, so I say self-love is an intention to take care of yourself, but there are 3 important facets to it. One facet is that it's not a me approach. So it takes your relationships and the people around you into consideration. The second is that it's not unconditional love towards yourself. And the third is that it's living with an intention to take care of yourself. And so when I say me, it's, we see it online, we see it everywhere. Self-love has sort of become this ideal that people think that in order for me to practice self-love, I need to distance myself from everyone and just focus on me, do everything that makes me happy, and then I'll think about the relationships later. That's not how self-love works. We are social beings, okay? So, our moral construct, social construct, everything, our worldview is based on the relationships that we formed in our early years, in our foundational years. And so to completely strip that away and say, okay, if I'm practicing self-love, I'm not taking into consideration what I can learn from the people around me or what I can benefit from my relationships. It's completely, it's ill-founded. It won't help you. You won't be able to practice self-love in a way that is nourishing, that helps you flourish, that helps you truly evolve and change. And so the way you practice self-love is that you look at your relationships, you make sure that you have a safe space, a support group that's there for you. And then when you want to, say, have a difficult conversation about something, you know that you can go to this particular person and have that conversation. Or when you want to go and grab a coffee, you're like, yeah, I want to go with my friend and I want to. So when we think about it in general, when we're practicing self-care or self-love, say we're practicing self-care and we want to go watch a particular movie or we want to go to a spa day, maybe 5 times out of 10 we will say, okay, I want to go by myself. But most of the time we want to go with the people around us, right? We want to take our friends, we want to take our mum, we want to go with our sister. And so you're practicing self-love, but you are valuing your relationships because you're building on those relationships as you practice self-love. It's impossible to practice self-love on your own. And I think there's also this other idea of until I until I don't love myself, I'm not ready for this particular goal, this particular job, this particular adventure, this particular relationship. And the thing with self-love is that it never ends. Self-love as an action, it will never end. You will always be practicing self-love as you heal from all these different experiences in your life. And so until, to think that until I don't love myself, I can't be X, Y, and Z, that's never going to happen. You will always there'll be good days and there'll be bad days. And I think this ideal of, if you love yourself, you every day wake up with, I love me. You don't do that. Even with your parents, even with your siblings, we don't wake up every day and we're like, I love you so much. No, some days we're like, you are pissing me off. You are getting on my nerves. I can't stand you, And so if you see self-love in that way as a relationship with yourself, just as it is a relationship with the people around you, you'll have bad days. You'll have days where you can't stand yourself because you have been that person who has been fighting with everyone and you just, you're irritated. And that's okay. That's completely okay. And so when you align it with the idea that as we're healing, we're always healing from something. There's never an end to healing. In the same way, there's never an end to practicing self-love. You're always going to be practicing self-love. You're always going to be learning new things about yourself. One day you'll be really happy with who you are. One day you'll be like, I want to work on myself. That's all self-love. And so when you see it in that way, then okay, I can continue going out with my friends, meeting my mom. I can continue looking for love, trying to get into a relationship. Whatever it is that you want to do, you don't need to avoid yourself from others. You don't need to alienate yourself from the people around you to practice self-love. Self-love incorporates everything and everyone that's around you. It's all encompassing. The people in your life make a huge difference when you're practicing self-love. And that's what it is. Yeah.
So on the flip side of that, obviously, and you talked about it a little bit, you sort of mentioned it about sometimes we do have to actually distance ourselves from certain people. Boundaries, maybe put in, because there are toxic people that can affect us. So with that in mind, how do you kind of cultivate a way forward when you have got people in your life that, particularly if sometimes it can be family or people close to us that are making self-love a bit difficult?
Yeah. So boundaries is a huge chapter in the path to self-love as well, because boundary setting is a form of tough self-love. The reason why it's a form of tough self-love, it's hard to do. It's hard to do. The feelings that it incites in the beginning can be uncomfortable because, sometimes when you set boundaries with the people around you, it can get confrontational, it can get difficult. They might want to distance themselves from you just as you might want to distance yourself from them. So how I see boundary setting is essentially, when you're practicing self-love, you're trying to, think about all these new ways to take care of yourself. You want to feel better about yourself. You want to change your environment, okay? So you're doing all these things. You are having the difficult conversations. You are admitting you have a problem with a particular thing, or admitting that you need to work on your trauma, which has affected you until now. You're doing all of that, but you're not feeling better. You're still not feeling okay. Why? Because your environment hasn't changed, okay? If you have people around you who are constantly reaffirming those same debilitating beliefs, people who make you feel bad about yourself, people who lower your self-esteem, people who are emotionally abusive, if you're still surrounded by those kind of people, self-love is not going to manifest in your life in the way that it needs to. So just as relationships are very important in you practicing self-love, they're also a huge block as well, the unhealthy ones, the toxic ones. So how do you work around it? How do you practice self-love in a way that's cultivating, but also bearing in mind that the relationships in your life are important? So the first thing that you do is your primary relationships, the ones that are in your safe group, your support circle. Who is in your support circle? Think about the kind of relationships that you share. So in the book, I use a lot of reflective exercises and journaling prompts where I really encourage my readers to ask themselves, who are the top 5 people that they're the closest to, that they would go to if they had a problem? Now write about the way that you feel about them. Like, is there something that bothers you about them? Because no one's perfect. Is this something that you can live with, or is this a root cause of your trauma? So, for instance, if it's your parent, right? If it's your parent, and they're in your safe space, your support group, and you have a good relationship with your mum right now, but growing up it was very difficult. Your parents always pushed you to strive for the best, but never complimented you or acknowledged your achievements, for instance. That's a huge reason why right now you have self-esteem issues. Okay, what can you do about it? Why don't you have a conversation with your parents? If you have a healthy relationship now, something that you can definitely talk to them about. If they're still like that right now, it's time to start setting some boundaries. It's time to start putting things in place that they can, put a line in place that they cannot cross. And boundary setting, it doesn't necessarily have to be confrontational, because a lot of the time when we have to set a boundary, for me personally, whenever I've set a boundary, it's with someone that's very close to me, someone that I've loved and cared about, right? And so if it became confrontational, I know that it would cause a barrier, a drift in our relationship. And so in the book, I use an example of a friend that I have. She probably will never read the book, so it's fine. A friend that I have who has been there for me for many years, very close to me, very nice, very sweet, has been there through some of the hardest moments. However, there was a time in our friendship where I noticed that whenever we went out, she never seemed to have any money. Okay, she never seemed to have any money to pay for dinner. Okay, I noticed this a few times. And at the time, I had a part-time job. I was working on my books. I was barely making enough income. And we'd get in the car and we'd start driving. And then she'd complain, oh my God, I'm so broke. And we're literally driving to dinner. I can't afford to pay for this. And then the people pleaser within me, I would always end up, putting my card forward and being like, I'll pay for dinner. Like when the waitress would come forward, I'd be like, it's okay, it's on me. And I kept doing this. Bearing in mind, she had a full-time job. Okay. And she would invest in designer goods. She would show me her new manicure the moment that we'd meet. So our priorities when it came to money were very different. Okay. And it really affected me. It was affecting how I felt about our friendship. And so instead of directly setting a boundary and telling her, I am not paying for you anymore, I set a subtle boundary. Whenever she would message me and be like, oh, let's meet for dinner. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, let's go. If the day before she messaged me saying I'm broke, or if on the way to dinner she said I'm broke, I'd be like, you know what, me too. Like, I can't really afford it either. Do you want to go for a coffee instead? If not, we can go for a walk around the park. Why don't we do that? Or why don't you come back to mine? And then over time, every time this happened, I kept reiterating the same thing. And not only did it make her feel better as well, in a way where she was like, I'm not constantly telling my friend that I'm broke and I feel so bad about it. She probably felt like she could relate to me because I was also reiterating the same beliefs. But also it became a case of where I was no longer paying for her and I felt better about our relationship. And, she's done so much for me that is more important than monetary resources or means. But that was affecting me. It was affecting our friendship. And so I was able to set this subtle boundary through just a little play on words. It wasn't even I didn't have to confront her. I just set a boundary of like, I'm not paying for you anymore. Let's do something else. And subconsciously, it kind of settled in her mind. It settled in my mind and we were able to get on with our friendship. And so the example is that the idea is that you don't have to necessarily set these hardcore boundaries. Like when we think of boundaries, we think that we need to sit our parents down and be like, you have done this.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be subtle. A lot of the times it isn't. And I get that. I completely get that. Sometimes you have to be very firm with the boundaries that you set. And so it's all about trying to differentiate between your relationships. Okay. So if it's someone whose moral values are so different to yours and you think you can live without them, you can set that boundary. And if they accept it, great. If they can't, you're okay. But if it's someone who's invaluable to you and you're like, most things about them are fine, it's just this particular thing that's bothering me, then you can set a boundary in a way that, cherishes the relationship, values your self-esteem, your mental, emotional, and physical well-being, but also doesn't disrespect their self-esteem in a way either. And so self-love is all about trying to value your relationship and make sure that you have these healthy relationships, but also know when to do the right thing for yourself. It's all about being a little bit calculating, trying to understand who's good for me, who's not good for me. Can I, survive if this person's out of my life? Is that good for me going forward on my self-love journey? If it is, great. If I need them on my self-love journey, if they're important to me, if they're integral to me, let's see if we can work around it in a different way.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important. And I often hear of people that have gone down this path of self-development and self-love, and then they've cut ties with all their friends because they're like, I've realized that everyone in my life is bad for me and blah,
shed the
blah.
lot. Yeah.
They've shed them all, and and then ended up kind of alone. And also going back to what you were saying about people pleasing as well, I feel like people pleasing is it's almost a little bit like deserting yourself, or putting others. It's nice to put others before you in an altruistic way and what have you, but when you're people pleasing, you're not doing it for the right reasons. It is kind of a form of self-neglect, really, isn't it? And I think as humans, we're so scared of being rejected and abandoned. It's in our nature and our DNA to be part of the pack and part of the tribe. So it can be really scary having these conversations or, even dropping hints because you're so scared of being rejected or abandoned by that person and then losing everyone because you're kind of trying to set boundaries. And I guess sometimes it might go that way. Like if you try and set a boundary with someone and then they really don't like it because that's almost reflecting something back on them that they don't like. Is that what do you do in those situations where it doesn't go right and you have a conversation with someone and it just blows up and then they're not respecting your boundaries?
So at the end of it, your relationships are sacred, right? They're supposed to be there to help you cultivate a better life for yourself. The loneliest people are the most unhappiest. We need people. So when you set a boundary and someone doesn't respect your boundary, you need to ask yourself, is this person going to respect me going forward? Because as people pleasers, we can sacrifice ourselves to the point just to please others, to the point where we can no longer recognize ourselves. I recall being this person where I wanted to people please and please the people around me so much that I became a shell of who I was, essentially. And so if, it's the main thing is to think about the moral values and the worldview that you share. If the boundary that you're setting is very integral to your moral values, if it's something that is a core value of yours and you cannot sacrifice that core value and you have set this particular boundary with this person and they're not respecting it, are you willing to sacrifice your core value to keep this person in your life? In the process of keeping people in your life, you don't want to lose yourself either. And so it's all about trying to understand what it is that it's important to you. Is it this person that's important to you or this integral core belief? If it's something as basic as, I don't know, every time we meet, you talk over me. Okay, if it's like that, if it's you're always talking over me and your friend doesn't seem to understand this and they're like, no, I always give you space to have conversations, then maybe that friend in your life isn't someone that you should be, relying on to have those conversations. Find a different friend to have those conversations, and you can keep that friend for a good time.
Right.
If it's something as core to you as this person is two-faced, or they backstab you, or they have different political views to you that are very, very core and integral and based on human rights and so on, then you need to ask yourself, if this person is not respecting my boundaries and they're saying these misogynistic, racist, things, can I keep that person? Because then in the process, I am, sacrificing my core beliefs and my core views on these things. And so, yeah, when you're setting a boundary and someone doesn't respect it, for me, the biggest thing I do is I sit down and I reflect on whether this person is valuable enough to me going forward that I'm able to overlook this particular thing. And I write about it in the Path to Self-Love as well, where I had an issue with a particular friend whose core beliefs were very different to mine. We're all imperfect, every single one of us, right? And the reason why we can be imperfect and still be loved is because the people who love us, they're okay with our imperfections. Our imperfections don't hurt them in a grand way. They don't, conflict with their moral views. However, sometimes those imperfections do. And you need to sit down and ask yourself, can this particular person's imperfection, can I still love them in the same way? And if you can't, then you step away. And that's what I did. I set my boundary. It wasn't accepted. And I said, you know what? This person's been great until now. I've had a great time. We've made some good memories. But I can't seem to get over this. And it's bringing a lot of negativity to my life. And so I just cut off contact after, that failed boundary setting. And that's what you have to do. You just have to ask yourself, what's more important, my boundary or their friendship?
Yeah, so true, so important as well. And then, if you're, say you've decided to cut that person out,
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a big conversation about it, or do you just kind of ghost them? Like, what's the most ethical way of doing that?
With subtle boundaries, it's very easy, not easy, but it's a lot easier to set them because they're so subtle the other person doesn't realize it. When you're setting an overt boundary, you have to be a little confrontational. So if they're not accepting the boundary, it's already decided that you're no longer going to be friends, right? Because it's a big hoo-ha confrontation. You've set the boundary. They've said, no, I don't agree with this. This is completely wrong. That's not how X, Y, and Z happened, and so on. It ends on a bitter note. And then after that, there's not really any scope. Like, we're adults now. We're not in school. We're not kids where I'm going to see that friend at school the next day and it will be a little awkward and then we'll patch up. I get on with my life, that person gets on with their life, and most of my friends, I don't talk to them every day. And so when I have a confrontational boundary setting and that goes wrong, I know for a fact that neither of us are going to reach out to each other after that. And so it kind of just fizzled out on it. It kind of just fizzled out on its own. I set the boundary, it wasn't accepted, it was an uncomfortable conversation, it ended on bad terms, and we both got on with our lives. And that's, no hard feelings.
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's talk a bit about self-love in a digital age, because obviously we are living in a very different time with regards to social media and online. And, there's an expectation. And obviously there's a lot of stuff around now for people can kind of buy into with regards to like memes and positivity and all that stuff. It's great. However, obviously there's a lot to do with like social media that means that we are often comparing and despairing, I call it. So how do we cope as individuals trying to self-love in a time where we're being bombarded with images and words and stuff that can cause us anxiety and depression?
Yeah. The social media problem, as I see social media as in, I started off in the book as a chapter on social media as a block to self-love. But then I change it in a way where I say that you can use social media for a lot more good than bad. And so for anyone on their self-love journey, say you are practicing self-love in your healing journey from a divorce. Okay, you're trying to move on from this relationship breaking up and you have had a good day. You've had a good day. You have, had a box and you've put all your old things in there from your marriage, and you listened to a podcast that taught you so much about self-esteem and self-love. You went on a walk, you took your dog for a walk, you had a really, really good day, and then you come home and you open your phone and Shannon from high school is on on holiday in Barbados with her husband and her 1-year-old. Instantly you feel horrible. You look at it and you're like, oh my God, Shannon has it all. She's got the husband, she's got the adorable kid, she's happily married, and here I am, my relationship has just broken down. You feel horrible about yourself. The thing is that Shannon didn't share the 2 a.m. feeds. She didn't share the fact that right before posting that photo, her and her husband had a massive argument over who's going to stay up tonight. She didn't share the horrible experiences and feelings she's having since, giving birth, the postnatal depression. She's not sharing any of that. She's only sharing the highlight reels. And the highlight reels problem is a huge problem for anyone who's practicing self-love. And in the book, I talk about, there's different journal prompts and different exercises that people can do in order to understand how much social media they use on a day-to-day basis. And there's different ways that I say we can deal with it. Okay, the social media does not need to be an enemy to self-love. Okay, social media can be a huge beneficiary. It can help us in so many ways. I myself, when I was healing and when I was practicing self-love, I created an Instagram page, right? I created an Instagram page. I started sharing my poetry and my prose and writing down all my feelings. And over time, I was healing as I created this community. I felt like there's people here who are going through similar experiences to me, and they can resonate with me and I can resonate with them. And I felt like I was a part of something. And so I learned the biggest thing about social media, and that is that we need to create an environment in our mind and online that others feel a part of. Social media doesn't have to be the problem. The way that we use it becomes a problem. One way to deal with it. Say you are practicing self-love to help deal with your fitness journey, okay? So you want to be a better weight because you've got certain health problems. You want to feel better. If you keep logging online and finding that influencer with the six-pack abs, which are very unrealistic in the long term, but six-pack abs, who looks really well and has these amazing carbs, and you feel bad about yourself, unfollow them. If you log online and you find that particular person and you're motivated by them, keep following them. So you have to be really intentional with the kind of pages you're following to begin with, okay? Because there's lots of social media. There's social media everywhere. We've got TikTok, we've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, we've got YouTube, Substack, everything. So you need to be intentional with the kind of pages that you follow. You need to do a social media sweep, essentially. That's what I call it. Go to your following list, unfollow people who you no longer talk to, people who you only look at to see how they're progressing so you can feel bad about yourself, people who you compare yourself to, people who demotivate you, and start following the kind of accounts, and there are so many, there are a plethora of accounts, motivating accounts, self-love pages, cute dog pages. There's just so much online that you can find now. Back when I was healing 8 years ago, there wasn't as much, but now there's just so much for us to look into. There's doctors and motivational speakers and podcasts like this. And there's just so much going on that can help you. So be intentional about who you follow. The second thing that I say, when you come online, when you go online and you see something, say that this particular person from high school has got a new car and you feel instantly bad. You feel, oh my God, they've got a new car and I'm driving this old one. Okay, do you want that car? If yes, can you get that car? Like, can you work towards it, save the money over the next few years to try and get that car? If yes, why are you feeling bad about it? Go and work on the goal. If the answer is no, I don't want that car, why are you feeling bad that they've got the car? Then you need to sit down and kind of ask yourself, why do I get low self-esteem? Why do I feel low self-esteem when I see someone succeeding? Is there something that went on in my childhood? Was it that, when the kids around in my school, they would get everything, all the latest gadgets, and my parents couldn't afford it? Is that what it is? Is that why I feel bad, that when someone gets something new, I feel bad because I've experienced this before? You need to really sit down and ask yourself why you feel low when someone is doing well online, why you don't feel motivated by it. There's so much that's going on within us that it has nothing to do with what people post. It's got a lot to do with how we our self-worth and how we feel about those particular things. And of course, social media isn't all great. It does paint a particular image. There are certain things that you look at and you're like, if I had this car, if I had this house, I'd be happier. If I had this much money, I'd be happier because that person looks happier. If I went on this holiday. So we go ahead and we book those hotels that those people online have booked. We go to those, restaurants. We eat that food. We do everything. And we're like, you know what? It looked so much better online. Mm-hmm. It appeared so much better online. And so we need to start focusing on us and what we want. Be reflective. What's going to make me happy when I'm practicing self-love and when I'm here? Not what people are doing. Everyone's journey is different. And the primary thing, the last thing that I would say with social media is create an environment where we can be vulnerable. Because it's not easy, okay? If Shannon's posted a photo of her husband and her child and we're so quick to be like, oh, she's great. If Shannon posted a photo of her crying, how many people would judge her? How many people would be like, oh my God, like I feel secondhand why? She's trying to express herself. She's trying to create, a comfortable environment online where she can be honest with her online friends. And so I think there's a lot of work that can be done on social media. There's a lot of good that can come from it, but it's all about being intentional. It's all about being intentional.
Yeah, so true. And looking within when you feel those emotions arise. Yeah. It's so true. Like I've noticed that before when you've seen something and you've been like, oh, that person's so lucky. And then you've asked yourself, like, do I want that? And then you realize it's not the thing that you want. It's like the freedom. Like, it's not that you want to go on holiday to Barbados or whatever. Yeah. It's actually that you just want the freedom, financial freedom or life freedom to be able to do that. So then it's like, well, how can I create that in my life without having to go on a trip to Barbados, Yeah. I wonder if we could talk a little bit. You were talking there about following people online, for fitness and stuff like that. I was wondering if we could talk a bit about self-love and body image and like dieting and stuff. And I've got friends that are always on some kind of diet or they're trying to lose weight or whatever it is. And it feels like there's a big difference between trying to lose weight because you feel like you're overweight and people are going to judge you or like, doing it for external reasons. And then there's people that are eating healthily for themselves, for their bodies, because they want to put the best things in their body. Could you talk a little bit about that and like how can we tell whether we're doing it for the right reasons and how can we move more into the self-love sphere?
I think the biggest thing with self-love is with anything that you do, whether it's exercising, eating healthy, anything, are you doing it because you think, okay, if I go to the gym, once I have that body, I will be happier? Is that what you're doing it? Once I look like that, I will be, more content. If that's the reason why you do those things, then you need to stop straight away. Okay, because you're not doing it for the right reason. You think that is a means to an end. The things that will help you be happier eventually are the hard stuff, the trauma work, right? Going the stuff that's the stuff that's really hard to do. That's going to make you happier in the long run. A particular weight is not going to make you happier. Looking a certain way is not going to make you happier. Having a certain amount of money in the bank is not going to make you happier. It's going to make life more easily accessible, and it's going to make things more practical for you, and it's just going to, offload a bit on you. It's not going to make you happier. If it's happiness and contentment that you're searching for, search for it within trying to heal from the past in your current relationships, make the most out of, your familial relationships, friendships, make the most out of the job that you do. If you enjoy your job, great. If it's a job that makes you very unhappy, you're spending 8 hours, 9 hours a day there, try and change that. If it's, I want to look like this particular fitness model online and that's why I'm doing it because she looks very happy and I will be very happy as a result, then that's not the right reason. And the way that you can really find out what the reason is, the way that you can see it is if in your head you are like, okay, when I'm 5 pounds lighter, I'll be happier. Okay? All right. When you're 5 pounds lighter, did you feel that happiness? No, actually, you know what? I need to lose more. When I'm another 5 pounds lighter, I'll be happier. So if when you've reached that goal, you're not happy, then your reason for getting to that goal is wrong, essentially. So it's all about trying to understand that when you reach those milestones that you have set for yourself, if you're no longer happy, you're searching for happiness in something that cannot be found in those things. It needs to be found within. So the people who eat healthy, right, they're happy in the process. They eat healthy, they feel better, they feel more energetic because they want to eat healthy for the sake of eating healthy. The people who are doing it because they want to look a certain way are not happy when they are dieting. They look miserable.
Yeah,
they don't
yeah.
look forward to going to the gym. They are setting themselves up for something that's not going to make them happier going forward. So when I go to the gym, I love the gym. Like when I don't go for a few weeks, I'm like, oh my God, how do I get back in? When I'm back in, I love it so much. It's a mindset thing. It's not about I need to lose weight or I need to, fit into this or that. It's that when I go to the gym, it's just, I feel like I'm in control of my body. I'm in my element. I can listen to a podcast and just, lift some weight. I'm happy. I've been the same weight for the last 8 years that I've been going to the gym. So my weight has not changed, okay? So it's not, for me, it's never been I need to change how I look. It's always been, I feel so much happier. I feel so much more content. My mindset, the hormones and the endorphins that are released when I'm working out are just so different. It's a different kind of high, right? And so it's not gym as a means to an end to me looking a certain way. It's the gym is itself the thing that is bringing me joy. And so, yeah, when it's... anyone, like if it's your friends or anyone who's going on a diet or whatever, if they're enjoying the process, they will always continue it because they're enjoying the process. If they're not enjoying the process and they're doing it for a particular end, then yeah, they're not going to get happiness at the end. And it's not, to me, it's not a self-love practice. It's essentially something that you think you must do to practice self-love, but you're not actually practicing self-love.
Yeah, and it's so important to be so honest with yourself as well, because I'm just thinking, when you were talking about that, I was thinking, yeah, I eat really healthy. Obviously, I don't try and lose weight because my metabolism is ridiculous. But then I was like, actually, if I'm honest with myself, I eat really healthy because I've got a lot of trauma around illness in the family. And I'm like terrified, just like a hypochondriac, terrified of getting sick. So that's not even really like a self-love thing from me. But it's, it takes a lot of honesty for me to admit that that's not why I do it, because I love junk food. But yeah, like it's so important to actually take a look at why you want the things that you want, and does it come from a place of like genuinely I want the best for myself because I love myself and I want myself to be happy, or is it like I want to look good for that person, I want to be able to wear a bikini on holiday and like for people to be like, oh wow, she looks amazing.
And even even if it's because I want to wear a bikini on holiday, if that's something that when you wear that bikini and you worked hard for it and you feel good, great. But if it's even after wearing the bikini you're like, oh, you know what, I could have lost more weight, or this doesn't look great. And then it's like, okay, we need to work on our self-esteem. Like you need to work on yourself. And no matter what weight you're going to be, no matter how you look, you still need to feel that love and that contentment in yourself. Essentially. It's just knowing that you're imperfect. And there's going to be certain things about you that are never going to be how you want them to be. Like, think about it in terms of our relationships and friendships and parents. We love them, but there are things that we're like, okay, if this wasn't there, you'd be perfect, but you're not. Neither am I. No one's perfect, and that's okay.
Yeah, I find that it's quite common with money and financial goals and career goals as well. I think especially if you're self-employed, and I know we've spoken a lot about sort of like fitness and some, maybe that's something that more women can connect with. But I feel like with men, maybe it's more like career goals and money. And like, I'm very guilty of being like, right, I need to do this. If I'm selling my work for this much money, and then if I've got this many followers and I've got to do that, and it's all like analytics and it's career stuff. And then but when I get to that point that I've been trying to aim for, I'm thinking about the next point. I'm not thinking like, this is it now, I've made it. I'm like, right, now I have to do this and now I have to do that. It's like, it's a never ending, it's like being on a hamster wheel. And it's really so much more enjoyable if you can just work on yourself, be happy, and then have the goals as something to work towards because you're enjoying the process and you just want to improve and get better as a person.
Yeah, I think as a self-employed, as a self-employed person, I also agree in that you just want to be a creator. But I think even for me, like I'm a writer and I just want to be a writer, but social media and the technological age has made it such that we have to be good at everything. And sometimes we just want to, like with you guys, you want to have these wonderful people that come on, have these ideas and share them with the world and not have to worry about promoting it on social media and, growth on like social media and followers. I'm the same, I'm like, I just want to focus on writing books and do it the traditional way of where publishing companies just print and publish for you and promote it for you. But now I'm having to do the go online and promote the book. And I think that's something that we're going to have to, as creatives, just, live with going forward. But it's so important to disassociate your identity from the likes. You know, to know that those likes don't define how I should feel about myself, how I should feel about my work. My work is worthy regardless of how many followers and how many likes I get. And it's so important to remind yourself. I have to all the time.
We both needed reminding of that as well lately, didn't we? Because we were talking about this recently. Like we're both creatives in our normal jobs, and I think often your creative work can be impacted by what you think like society or social media or what's in the media, like what's going on in the world at the moment. It's so influenced by that sort of stuff. You know, if you're like writing a film or pay a piece of work, you're like, what's going to sell? What can we, how can we make this as popular as possible because it's a reflection of our worth? But actually
it comes back to what you were saying earlier about intention and like having that right intention around and authenticity. Like it's your intention, it's your authenticity, then that will come out in the work. You know, and I think if you're trying to create something, for example, with someone else in mind, then it's never going to be as good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Ruby, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so
I feel like
much.
I could talk to you for hours.
Thank you for having me.
And where can people find your book?
My book, The Path to Self-Love, is available everywhere where books are sold. Amazon, Waterstones, Foyles, Daunt Books, everywhere in the UK, everywhere in the US, everywhere all over the world. So yeah, if you have a bookstore in your country, just
go and get it.
Go and grab it.
Perfect. And people can find you on Instagram as well. And you've got amazing excerpts from the book and from, you know, your own writing and stuff. And it's amazing. It's very inspirational. So people should go follow you as well.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you
for having me. Thanks.